Hello lovelies, welcome back to Amy of Melbourne. I'm Amy, obviously, and today I'm going to be showing you how to copy your own existing clothes in order to make new clothes. I have used a top, this is the top here, to make this dress as well as this top, which I am very excited about. I love them, I'm super happy with them, and hopefully you will be too. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So the things that you will need to do this, you need a t-shirt obviously, you need some pattern weights, you need some scissors, you need something to write with. I'm using a Sharpie. I end up using a thicker one so you can see it on camera, but this one that's quite thin is much better if you're doing it at home. This is trace and twirl that I got from Spotlight. You can also use wrapping paper or all sorts of things, and you need your t-shirt itself. It's also good if you have one of these. It's a French curve. So you're going to place your trace and twirl or whatever you're tracing on onto the board, cut some out, and then you're going to lay your t-shirt out and hold it down with some pattern weights. Then it's just, you just trace around it. You try and keep it to its actual shape and trace around that. It requires some folding and some pulling and tugging, but eventually you do get it. Because I've got the right side, the front side showing, I'm actually doing the back. That's what the neckline is. I'm going to use the back, and then I'll flip it over to do the other side so it's easier. You're trying really hard to stay on the seam line. So wherever the stitching is where you are going to try and draw your lines. Mine's a Peplum top, so I'm going to do just to the bottom there in terms of pattern pieces, and then I'll just use measurements to make the rectangles to the bottom. As you can see, it's quite thin, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that French curve that I had before, this one here, and I'm going to use that so that I can mark out the pattern and also make sure that it's all smooth and that everything is in the right place. That is literally what the French curve is for. It's to use to help make garments right for a body. I'm only making half of the top pattern because I can put it on the fold of my fabric and I need to use less. Don't have to worry about making it exactly right each side. I'm trying to line up my pattern with the top and bottom lines of the ruler, and then once I'm happy with it, I'm going to cut all of that out so that it's ready to be a pattern. Remembering, of course, that this is a pattern that has no seam allowance, so you either have to add that in yourself onto the fabric, or you need to add it in to your pattern pieces. I'm marking this out so that I know which one is the back and which one is the front. Double lines for back, single lines for front. Then I'm going to lay it over the top. I'm going to make sure that my front is a little bit wider than my back because I have a bust, so that needs to be accommodated for. I'm making sure that my armholes are the right size compared to each other, that the bottom, the back is longer than the front because it's a peplum top, and I'm making sure that the shoulders and the sides fit. Once I've done that, I'm going to do the sleeve. Here I end up doing the whole sleeve, but then I don't use it because it's annoying and I did it on the fold. But it's the same process. You're just tracing it out and then you're going to use a French curve, which you can actually download online. You can then print it out and just use a paper one to create the actual pattern itself. Most garments do fit better if you have a different back front sleeve. They do technically fit a bit different, but because this is a stretchy jersey t-shirt, then it's okay if it's only on the fold. Okay, so for the peplum, it's going to be 2 rectangles, and then I'm going to measure out my top that I already own to work out how big I'm going to make those. So mine is going to be 100 across and 36 down, plus seam allowance on the sides. So you need to make sure that you know what your seam allowance is going to be. to include it. Now we're going to cut everything out. We're going to place them on the fold. You'll need one of each piece because there's no lining for this, and two of the sleeve if you have two arms. If you don't, then just do it once. What I'm doing here is I'm actually tracing on to the no seam allowance point, and that is actually what I use as a guide for stitching. I'm going to use the width of my rotary cutter so that I know that I have enough space for my seam allowance. My rotary cutter is approximately 1 centimeter wide, so I can just use that. Again, it's jersey stretch fabric, 4-way stretch in particular, so it's quite forgiving of any sort of mistakes that you might make in terms of making it a little bit too big or a little bit too small. Now that we've got the back and the front, we're going to do the sleeves. Again, we need 2 of those, and they are on the fold. With this, because I added the seam allowance back in before, I'm going to go directly around it to make the sleeve. Then I'm just going to use my measuring tape to measure out the rectangle and how big I need those rectangles, including the seam allowance, which was what I was doing there. So mine was 36, so I'm adding in a couple of centimeters and a bit, just to make sure that I've definitely got enough. And I do like to have quite a wide hem, so you've got to make sure that that is in your measurements as well. Because mine is so wide, I'm going to take off the selvage edge, and then I'm going to actually use the bit that I already cut off as a little hack of how to make sure that they're exactly the same size, the back and front. Then we're going to put it together. We're going to start by stitching together the shoulders. Most garments start this way, most tops start this way. You can use a zigzag stitch on your machine like I'm going to use, or you can use a twin needle, or you can use a serger or overlocker. It's totally up to you. I like the simplicity of using a zigzag stitch. Because it's zigzag, you can still stretch. So then the shoulders are done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix up a little bit where my pattern wasn't quite right, which is fine. Then I pin the center of the sleeve shoulder to that center line of my shoulder. Then I do the ends and then everything in between. Stitch it together, and this is what you get. Now I'm doing the most important part, which is actually pressing. It makes a huge difference to every single thing you'll ever sew. Make sure that you press everything. Seams should go towards the center and the back, so you can see what it looks like there once it's all pressed, and this is what it looks like before it got pressed. So it does make quite a big difference to how everything lays and looks. Once you've done that, you're going to flip the wrong sides out, and you're going to do the underarm seams. So you're going to start by putting together the seam that attaches the body to the arm, the sleeve. Then you're going to do the end of the sleeve, the end of the body, and between. Same sort of process each time. This just makes sure that you have lined things up correctly, and if you haven't, that they're in a place where you can fudge it, basically. So if you're off a little bit with your cutting, or you're measuring in the first place and the body is a little bit too long on one side, you can just chop that off and it's fine. So overall, I'm pretty happy. I'm just trying it on, and I'm happy with where most of the seams are. I think on the pattern, I'm going to adjust the shoulders a little bit. You're seeing a little bit forward here, and like just a mil or two too big on here. But overall, I'm very happy with that. I'm happy with where it's sitting here. And yeah, the sleeves are also just a little bit big, but we'll see how that looks once I've actually finished doing the hems on the sleeves. Apart from that, I need to now, all you need to do is you need to add the peplum. So those are our rectangles. We're going to sew the rectangles together on either side and then gather and attach. You can make those rectangles much, much longer if you wanted to make a dress out of this. You can do that if you have a normal t-shirt pattern. If you wanted to add a skater style gathered skirt onto the bottom. Pretty easy. So let's do that. I've already stitched my panels together with zigzag stitch, so now we're going to go to a straight stitch and a 5 or whatever your largest stitch length is. Don't back stitch and leave long tails. This is what we're going to do to gather our skirt or peplum pieces, and just run 2 lines, one just above the other, along the top edge of your peplum or skirt. Again, don't use your automatic cutter. You want those really long threads so that you can pull on them to gather. That's 1. And that's 2. Mine already starts to gather up a little bit, but basically you just grab the 2 bottom threads, not the top ones, separate them out, and then give them a pull, and it gathers up your material. Before you gather up your peplum or your skirt, you're going to place it wrong side out with the top part right side out inside it, so that they're right sides together. And then you're going to pin the center of the bodice and the center of that skirt peplum together so that you know where that is, and the side seams. And then you're going to gather up all of that extra fabric so that it's the same size. You want to have your skirt and the bodice to be exactly the same size that goes along. After you've made it the same size, then you're going to make sure that the gathers are evenly spaced along that skirt and not just bunched up on one side. Once you've pinned it all together, go back to your zigzag stitch and you're going to zigzag stitch all the way around, holding all of those gathers in place. And that looks all put together. Now to do the neck, you're going to measure how big the neck hole is, and then you're going to cut a strip that is 80% of that length, whatever that length happens to be. And then you're going to iron that strip in half. You're going to sew the 2 little short ends together, put it back in half again, then find the 4 quadrants of it, and then you're going to line those up with the same sides of the top. You're going to put right sides together, wrong sides facing out, as much as you can, and they're going to sort of line up. Your t-shirt itself, the neckline should be just a bit bigger than the band that you're putting on it, and then you have to, as you sew, stretch a little bitty bit to make sure that that neck is the same size. And you can see it looks really lovely and really nice. And now I am going to choose to wreck it completely. Don't do this part. You can if you're smart. I wanted to use a twin needle in order to sew down the raw edge. So I checked my twin needle tension and it was tunneling. So I was like, oh, well, I know how to fix that. And I went straight to doing the t-shirt itself. Turns out I didn't fix it. I didn't fix it at all. So now I had to cut my old neckband off and put a new one on. That was annoying, but you know, we all make mistakes. This is one of mine. Learn from it. Don't do this. After you have put your new neckband on, and you can do your hem at the bottom as well as hemming your sleeves. I chose to give mine quite a deep hem because I think it looks nicer. It helps hold like the fabric down in a nice way. But it's up to you what you like and what your previous garment looked like. I'm doing an extra bit here because I cut the neckband off originally. I'm adding some twill tape just across the back of the neck, over the top of the seam allowance, up one side, back down the other side. It just to give it that little bit of stability. It means that this part of the neckband will not stretch. You can do this all the way across the shoulders if you need a little bit more hold there too. Also, I forgot to show you that you should trim down that neck line seam allowance. So yeah, we're adding that on. You can see it doesn't really stretch, but there it is. That's the end of making our top, and I liked it so much I made a dress too. If you happen to be the same size as me, which is unlikely, approximately a size 22 Australian, you can actually get this from my website as a free download. It doesn't have any other instructions with it, you have to watch the video. It doesn't have any grading to it, it's just the pattern as I made it from my own clothes. So if you're interested in that, head to www.amyofmelbourne.com and you can download that from there. So that's it. Please make sure that if you did like this, that you do like and subscribe and the bell notification, all of that sort of stuff, so that I can keep making content for you. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye, lovelies.